Hello everybody, and welcome to this screencast, the purpose of which is to describe the process of completing the Lucille Monthly Environmental Report. My name is Noel Woods. I'll be taking you through this short training movie. So during this training movie, not only will we be looking at the monthly environmental report, but we'll also be making reference to a number of other documents. They include the Environmental Incident Register, the Environmental Training Register, the Environmental Complaints Register, and the Environmental Data Log, which includes all of the information you need in relation to waste generation, resource consumption, monitoring results for dewatering and noise monitoring, and hazmat data. And just one important thing to note, over the course of the presentation you will see a large yellow dot moving around the screen. The dot denotes the position of the cursor, and it's intended to give you an idea of the cursor movement so you can follow the training more easily. Okay, so let's get straight into it and we'll have a look at the monthly environmental report. So this is the cover page of the new format monthly environmental report, and what I'd like to do in this section is to give you a brief overview of the report structure. Before we do that though, I'd like to introduce a number of important navigation keys that I'll be using over the course of this screencast. So if you look up here at the top left hand corner, there's a number of keys which are important. These keys here on the very left allow you to page up and page down. Over here, there's buttons here which allow you to zoom in and zoom out. And this button at the end of that row allows you to return to full screen. So there are the navigation keys I'll be using, and let's have a quick overview of the report. What you should notice about the report is that it's been color-coded as per different sections to allow the user to more easily identify that subsections are part of the same overall section. And what you will notice as well is that in some cells you're able to input some data and make some changes. However, in other cells it's totally locked down. If I want to delete food waste and put in some other kind of waste category, it doesn't let me do it. I can't make changes to a lot of the content. And thankfully this gets us away from the problem we've been having in the past where contractors or the consultants would totally change the content and the format of the report. That doesn't work for us at all. We need to stick with a set content, a set format. Let me just delete that and I'll return to full screen. So as I said, there's a number of different sections, all color coded. And one of the important elements of the report is that at the end we've included these appendices. And in these appendices we've provided you a space which you need to attach your registers or your logs to. And we will use those registers and logs to verify that the figures that you've placed in the earlier sections of the report are accurate. So that's one of the new main features of this report. Okay, so having done that overview, let's get into the detail and we'll start filling out the report section by section. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is to enter the contractor's name in the space provided. We're going to use Samsung. CP number CP382, and for the reporting period we're going to use September 2015. Now look what happens when I type in the short version of September 2015. The report automatically converts that into a standard format. Let's try something else. The 9th month of 2015, and the report will also automatically convert that. Okay, so that's the cover page done. Let's move on to the next page. first thing we see when we get past the cover page is part 1 of the report, and it clearly states that part 1 needs to be completed by the contractor's third-party environmental consultant. And part 1 consists of 2 subsections. Section 1.1, which is the endorsement statement, and here we need the consultant to write a statement to say that they have reviewed the report, they verify and approve the contents of the report. We felt that in the past we weren't really getting enough from the third-party environmental consultants, and they need to be doing more than just stamping and signing the report. They need to provide a summary, or rather a statement that they have reviewed and approved the report. The endorsement statement needs only to be 1 or 2 paragraphs long. Something like this. And it's recommended that at the bottom the consultant provides their company stamp and signs the report. So we're looking for something like that from the endorsement statement. Okay, let's move on to the next section. The next section is section 1.2, executive summary. And here we require the consultant to provide a short executive summary of the main points contained within the main body of the report. And the executive summary should be like any executive summary you'd see in any formal report. So it just needs to be a couple of short paragraphs summarizing the main elements of the report, something like that. Okay, that's section 1 complete. Let's move on to section 2. Okay, so we move on to the next page, and the first thing you should see on this page is that this is now part 2 of the report. Part 1 of the report was being completed by the contractor's third-party environmental consultant. Part 2, however, should be completed by the contractor. Now, one of the things that we thought would happen, which hasn't happened, which is a little bug that we need to fix before we push out this template, is that these details here should have populated automatically to be the same as the details that are contained on the cover page. They haven't done that, so let me do that now. Okay, so there's the details included. The next section that we want to look at is section 3, introduction. And what we require here in section 3.1 is a brief description of the scope of work. Now, the scope of work should be available to the contractor in numerous documents which are available. Perhaps speak to your colleagues in the planning department or in the contracts department, and they will be able to provide you with a description of the scope of works. So what we're looking for is just a short description of the scope of works, maybe a paragraph or 2. And also what we need is a short description of any activities that took place during the reporting period which have potential to have a significant environmental impact. So a short description of any activities which you feel are worth mentioning that had potential for an environmental impact. So a couple of short paragraphs like that should suffice. Section 3.2 asks for the current overall construction progress. And this is a drop down or drop up menu in this case. And there are values between 1% and 100%. So we require you to tell us what your current progress is as of the last day of the reporting period. And for this particular example, I'm going to choose 42%. So let's scroll out, check that we have all the details we need. Yes, we do. And now we can move on to the next page. The next section is section 4, environmental management and operational control. So let's scroll in a little bit. The first thing you will see in this section is section 4.1, environmental incidents. So under section 4.1, the first question that's asked is, how many environmental incidents have occurred within the reporting period? Now, where do we get that information from? Well, the information should be available to us from the environmental incident register. So we'll click down here and we'll go to our environmental incident register. And this is our register of all the incidents that have taken place over the course of 2015. And for the purposes of clarity, I've highlighted in grey that there's been one incident during the reporting period. But let's go back to the report. Let's imagine that we've had 0 incidents. What we need you to do is click here on the little drop down arrow, choose 0 if there's been no incidents, and in the space provided for incident description, just type the words not applicable, and therefore we know that you've had 0 incidents during the reporting period. But that's not the case, so let's delete that and let's delete that. Before I move on, we've given you a total of 10 is the maximum number on the drop down menu. If you've had more than 10 incidents, there's something seriously wrong on your project site. But having said that, if you have more than 10 incidents, what you can do is do a manual input. So even though the drop down menu only gives you a figure, maximum figure of 10, you can choose to input any figure you wish. Okay, so let's go back to the register. We know from the register that we've had 1 incident. So we go to the report and we click 1. Go to the register, and this incident happened, as we can see, on the 30th of September 2015. So 30-9-2015. When something clever happens, it automatically converts into a standard day, month, year format. Next thing you need to do is provide a short description of the incident. Okay, so I've typed in the details, and even though this cell only allows you space to type in 2 lines of text, don't worry about that. If you go over 2 lines, this little plus sign will appear, and when you click on the plus sign, a scroll down menu appears. It allows you to scroll down and have a look at the additional lines which you can't see immediately. So there's 4 lines of text in total, and that's absolutely fine. Feel free to use as many lines as possible. But what we want here, guys, is a short incident description. Okay, the next section is environmental training. So the first question that's asked is, how many environmental training sessions were provided during the reporting period? Now, where we get this information from is from our environmental training register. So I click down here and open up my training register, and in the training register, which is a very simple spreadsheet, you can see that there's 2 tabs. There's the environmental training tab, and then there's the environmental toolbox tab. So we're interested in training. This is what we want to look at. And the training that we've done is listed here chronologically, and you can see that during the month of September, which is the reporting period, There's been 3 training events that have taken place. So I go back to my monthly report. How many training sessions were provided? I click on the drop down menu and the answer is 3. Just to explain, the drop down menu goes to a maximum of 10. If you've done more than 10 training sessions, which is fantastic, you can just manually input the number there. So if you want to manually input 3, you can do that, or you can choose it from the drop down menu. Okay, so let's go back to the training register. The first training that took place was refueling procedure on the 8th of September. So let me fill in these details and I'll come back. Okay, you join me just as I'm finishing off filling in the training details. The number of trainees for MSDS was 21. So there's a drop down menu here between 1 and 100. I want to choose 21 trainees. Let's say, for example, there was 121 trainees. You can input that figure manually. The figure I'm looking for is 21. Okay, so let's do just a quick double check to make sure the details are the same. And they are. Okay. Let's move on then to the next section. Question 4.2.2 asks how many environmental toolbox talks were provided during the reporting period. So I go to my training log, I click on the tab for environmental toolbox talks, and here we see for September there has been a total of 13 toolbox talks conducted. This log actually comes from CP6B Al-Jaber, who were kind enough to give us a copy of this. Those guys are doing a lot of training, which is absolutely fantastic. So the number we're looking for is 13. We go to our drop down menu and it doesn't give us 13, the maximum number is 10. That's okay, we can manually input 13 into the cell provided. And then the report asks for the title of the toolbox talk and then the number of the trainees who attended that talk. So let's go back and look at the training log. First one is storage of waste. It's 71 trainees. So let me fill in these details and I'll come back to you in a couple of minutes. Okay, you've joined me just as I'm finishing off this section of the Toolbox Talk training, and the last figure I need is the number of attendees, which is 66. Sorry, I should explain that there's also a drop-down menu here between 1 and 100, and you can choose the appropriate number, in this case 66. Okay, so clearly you can see that the contractor's done a lot more toolbox talk than we've made provision for in the report. If you have additional toolbox talks data that you want to include in the report, simply print off a copy of your training register and include it in Appendix H. And Appendix H is dedicated to miscellaneous attachments. Move on now to the next section. The next section is 4.3 environmental complaints. And in this section we need you to describe any environmental complaints that were received during the reporting period. So where do we go to retrieve this information? What we need to do is look at our environmental complaints register. So let's open that, have a look. And we can see from the complaints register that there has been no environmental complaints for 2015. And this is sort of what we expect. It's very rare that we get environmental complaints within Lucille at a CP level. So we'll go back to the monthly environmental report, and in the cell titled Complaint Description, we enter not applicable if there have been no complaints. Let's imagine though for a second that there has been a complaint. What we need to do is enter the date and then enter a description of the complaint. Something like that. Okay, so that's all the information we need in that section. Let's scroll out. All the information we need is populated in the relevant cells. We can move on to the next page. So the next section we're going to look at is 4.4 environmental inspections. And the first question is, how many environmental inspections were conducted within the reporting period? So it's up to the contractor to provide us with this figure. It's a drop-down menu, a maximum number of 50. Let's say, for example, during the reporting period, it was a total of 23 inspections. Next question is, how many environmental inspections were conducted by the contractor? Let's say, for example, there were 20 working days in the month, so 20 conducted by the contractor. And how many environmental inspections were conducted by construction supervisor or PMCN? Obviously, if there was a total of 23 inspections and the contractor did 20 of those, it makes sense that the remaining 3 were conducted by supervisor consultant or PMCN. The next section, in section 4, is the storage of chemicals and potentially polluting substances, and this is commonly known as hazmat. Now, in this section there's 2 questions which are pretty straightforward, both yes and no type questions. The first question, 4.5.1, are chemicals and potentially polluting substances stored on site? And of course the answer to that is yes. I've yet to encounter a construction site that doesn't have chemicals present on site. The next question then, if the answer to question 4.5.1 is yes, which it is, have you attached the hazmat storage inventory to Appendix A of the report? So this is the first time we get into our environmental data log, and I'll just open that for you to show you what it looks like. This is the environmental data log, and we need to go to the hazmat storage inventory tab, which you can see down here. It's tab number 1. So let's open that tab, and we can see that the table has been completed, and it's this table which needs to be printed off and attached to the monthly environmental report. Now at the end of this screencast I'll show you how to do that. So let's return to the monthly report. We're going to click yes to say we will attach that report to Appendix A. Okay. Those sections are now complete. Let's move on to the next page. Okay, the next section of the report is section 5, waste management. And there's a number of different sections here which need to be completed. Let's zoom in and have a look. So the first question in this section is 5.1. Is waste being collected, stored and removed from the project site? And this is a yes or no type question. And of course the answer is yes. We're collecting waste, we're storing waste, and then we're subsequently removing the waste from the site. So obviously the answer to this is yes. The next question, 5.2, asks, if the answer to question 5.1 is yes, which it is, have you attached the monthly waste removal log to Appendix B of this report? So the monthly waste removal log is one of the tabs within the environmental data log. Let's have a look at that. And you can see here down the bottom, the yellow tab, which is tab number 2, is the waste removal log. Let's open that. And you can see that the waste that was removed from the project site over the month of September is all detailed here. It's very important to note that this log is intended to only record waste that has been removed from site. We're not interested in waste that's in storage, only waste that has left your site. So the waste removal log is complete. Let's go back to the monthly environmental report. And are we going to attach this to Appendix B of the report? Yes, we are. So we click yes. The next section of the report is section 5.3, and here we need you to input the quantity of waste that has been removed from the project site during the reporting period. And clearly here in red letters it states that we're only asking about waste that's been removed from the site. Something also to note is that the quantities that we require you to input are in tons only. So each of these categories of waste, we require you to tell us how many tons of that waste was removed from site. So again, where do we get this information? It comes from the environmental data log. Let's open the log. We were just looking at the waste removal log a moment ago, and here you can see on the log all of the information that we need is here. As explained in a previous podcast by Bevan, this table automatically converts meters cubed into tons. So the information we're looking for to input in the report appears here in the yellow section of the table. This is really, really important. We're only interested in the figures that appear in the yellow section of the table. So these are the figures that we're going to input into the monthly environmental report. So straight away we can see for food waste there was a total of 9.8 tons. Let's open the monthly environmental report, and in the cell for food waste we type in 9.8. Now unfortunately the report rounds this figure up to the nearest whole number, so that's a little bug that we're going to have to iron out. Okay, so let me fill in the rest of the details and I'll come back in a few moments. Okay, so you rejoin me as I've inputted all of the figures from the waste removal log. Let's just double check that we've got all our figures correct, and we do. You may notice that in the waste removal log we also have categories for hazardous waste. Now we'll get to that in just a moment, but for the purposes of the table in 5.3 we don't require you to enter the quantities of hazardous waste. So that's an important point just to note. Okay, so let's move on to the next section. The next section is 5.4, and this relates to quantities of hazardous waste removed from the project site during the reporting period. So just two questions in this section, both yes and no type answers. First question, was hazardous waste removed from the project site during the reporting period? Either yes, it was removed, or no, it was not removed. We know that hazardous waste removal happens mostly intermittently. It's not something that happens every single month. So what you need to do is go to your environmental data log, and have a look at your waste removal log. And as mentioned previously, in this section, if there is entries for hazardous waste removal, then that means that hazardous waste has been taken away from your site. And we can see here that yes, there is hazardous waste removed during the reporting period. So we go back to the monthly environmental report and we can click yes. Next question, if the answer to 5.4.1 is yes, which it is, have you attached the monthly waste removal log to Appendix B of this report? And the answer to that is yes. We will attach the waste removal log, which details the hazardous waste that's been removed from the project site during the reporting period. Okay, so that section is complete. We can move on then to the next section, which is section 5.5, and this section is about quantities of hazardous waste which is stored on the project site. Now there's a really important point to note here. Section 5.5 we're talking about hazardous waste stored on site, whereas section 5.4 is about hazardous waste that was removed from site. So that's a really important thing to note, guys. So the first question, there's two questions, both yes or no type answers. The first question, 5.5.1, is hazardous waste being stored on your project site? Now, where do we go to find out if we are storing hazardous waste? You need to go to your environmental data log, and on the data log, tab number 3 is hazardous waste inventory. So the contractors should maintain an inventory of hazardous waste stored on their site. And quite clearly you can see over the month of September that these chemicals are stored on site. So with that information we go back to the monthly environmental report and answer the question. Is hazardous waste being stored on your project site? The answer is yes. So we click the yes box. Next question, if the answer to 5.5.1 is yes, which it is, have you attached the monthly hazardous waste storage inventory to Appendix C of this report? We've just looked at the hazardous waste storage inventory, which is here. And yes, we do want to attach it to the report as an appendix, Appendix C. So we're going to click yes. Okay, so that's that section complete. Let's scroll out. Okay, all the data we need is populated in the correct cells. We can now move on to the next section. The next section is section 6, resource consumption, and this section comprises of two short subsections, 6.1 fuel consumption and 6.2 water consumption. So let's scroll in a little bit. The first thing we need to do is to input the total amount of fuel consumed on the project site, both petrol and diesel. So to retrieve this information we need to go to our environmental data log, and in the data log we can see that there's a tab number 4 for resource consumption. And on this tab is a table of all of the fuel consumption and water consumption during the reporting period. So the figures we initially need are over here in the red section for fuel consumption. Let's go back to the monthly environmental report. And the quantity for diesel from the log is entered like this. Let me input the rest of the figures and I'll come back to you guys in a moment. Okay, if you join me just as I'm finishing the last input into this section. Okay, so all of the required information has been inputted. Let's just do a double check to make sure we've got the figures correct. and yes, the figures are correct. Okay, so that's section 6 complete. We can move on to the next section. The next section is section 7, environmental monitoring. And this section comprises of a number of subsections. First of those subsections is 7.1, noise monitoring. And here there are 4 questions that we need to answer, and the answers to these questions are contained in the environmental data log. So let's go straight to the environmental data log and have a look. You can see here on the data log, tab number 5 is the noise monitoring log. And we've created a space where the contractor can record all of the noise monitoring activities over the course of the reporting period. And what you should be able to see here is on the 5th of September, noise monitoring took place at 4 locations. So there were 4 noise monitoring locations that this contractor uses. This part of the log is divided into 2 sections. There's a table here for noise monitoring during the day and a table here for noise monitoring during the night. And both of these tables have information, data related to monitoring activities. So let's go back to our monthly environmental report. And the first question under noise monitoring is, at how many locations does noise monitoring take place? And we've seen that there's 4 noise monitoring locations. So you can use the drop-down menu to input 4. If there's a larger amount than 10, which is the maximum on the drop-down menu, you can input the number manually. The number we're looking for is 4. The next question, has noise monitoring been conducted during the reporting period? And clearly, because we can see the table is populated, yes, noise monitoring has taken place. So we click yes for that. The next question, was nighttime work conducted during the reporting period? And the fact that we have noise monitoring data for nighttime does suggest that nighttime work took place. So that's a yes. And the final question in this section, and there's a little error here that we need to fix. If the answer to 7.1.2 is yes, have you attached the monthly noise monitoring log to Appendix D of this report? And yes, we do want to attach the our noise monitoring log to the report, so we will click yes. Okay, that's all we need to do for that section. Let's move on to the next section. The next section is 7.2, air quality monitoring. And in this section we just need you to provide a short description of whatever mitigation measures you're taking to ensure air quality standards are maintained. And what you need to be thinking about here are, what are your sources of atmospheric emissions that may lead to reduced air quality? And those types of things are activities that lead to airborne dust, or equipment that has atmospheric emissions, such as your heavy plant and equipment, vehicles, generators, etc. So you should be telling us here about your dust suppression activities, both on the roads, on the screeners, the crushers, any earth moving operations you're involved in, such as stockpiling. And you also need to be telling us about how you're managing your equipment. Tell us about regular maintenance programs, daily inspections to check for dark emissions, those types of things. So all we need is a short number of paragraphs, something similar to this, that describes to us your main mitigation activities. Okay, Let's scroll out. Those sections are now completed, and we can move on to the next section. Okay, so the next section is section 7.3, dewatering monitoring. And we know a lot of CPs aren't involved in dewatering, only a small number are. So the very first question is there active dewatering taking place on your project site? If the answer to the question is no, and you're not doing any dewatering, all you need to do is click the no box, and that's it. You're completely finished for this section. You can move on to the next section. However, if you are involved in dewatering, the answer is yes, and then we require you to complete the rest of this section. So in this example we're looking at, yes, they are conducting dewatering, and that takes us to the next question. If the answer to 7.3.1 is yes, which it is, have you attached the monthly dewatering monitoring log to Appendix E of this report? And yes, we do have the monitoring log, which we'll look at in just a second, and you do need to attach that as an appendix. So we're going to click yes to that. Next question, what's the total estimated volume of water discharged from the dewatering network during the reporting period? What you need to do is to get with your colleagues in construction and specifically your dewatering subcontractor, and ask them for the total volume discharged during the reporting period. It's generally a pretty large number, so let's just say 2,800,000 meters cubed during the reporting period. Okay, so the next section then talks about monitoring results. So what we need to do now is look at our environmental data log, and we see on the environmental data log tab number 6 is related to dewatering, and here we have all the dewatering data for this CP over the month of September. Immediately what you'll notice is that there's two tables. This top table is for a sampling location called Discharge number 1, and this table below is related to a different location entirely called Discharge number 2. And as explained in the previous screencast by Bevan, the figures are populated here, and those figures which exceed are automatically highlighted in red. So let's go back to the monthly environmental report and find out what information we need from this table. So the first parameter we need to look at is turbidity. And there's a number of questions that we have to answer. For turbidity, we have to input the number of samples that were taken, the number of samples which exceed the limit, and then the maximum turbidity result. So let's go to our environmental data log, and for turbidity we can see that there's a number of exceedances, both from discharge number 1 and at discharge number 2. So over the reporting period there was a total of 26 samples taken at each location. There's 2 locations, so 26 multiplied by 2 is 52. So there's a total of 52 samples taken. I've had a look at this in advance, and I can tell you that there were 8 samples which exceeded the limit, and the maximum turbidity result was 58.1, which occurred on the 22nd of September. Similarly for TSS, 52 samples taken, 26 from discharge number 1 and 26 from discharge number 2. A total of 10 exceedances, and the maximum TSS result was 152 NTU, which occurred on the 25th of September. Let's go back and just double check those numbers. feel free to hit pause and just double check those numbers if you wish, but I can tell you that they are correct. Okay, so let's go back to the monthly environmental report, and then the next section we have to populate is this table here, which relates to weekly monitoring. So let me fill out these details and I'll come back in a couple of moments. Okay, you join me just as I'm finishing inputting the last figures in this table. Okay, and you can see, if we go back to the environmental data log, that these figures come from here. You can see that once per week these parameters are monitored. Now I've inputted those figures here. I haven't inputted the figures from the table below because there's just not space on the report to input those figures. But by attaching a printout of your monthly dewatering monitoring log to the report, it just means that us and the client and the MOE can see your full set of data. And it's unusual for dewatering networks to have more than one discharge. So mostly discharge occurs at one location, and if that's the case, then this table is usually sufficient to capture all the details. If you're discharging at more than one location, it's absolutely fine. Just input the information as it relates to your first discharge point, and then we'll see the additional data in Appendix E. Okay, so that's all the information populated on that section. We can now move on to the next section. The next section of the report is Section 8, and Section 8 is the final section of the report. This section relates to supporting documents. And really this is an aide-memoir to assist you as a reminder to attach relevant documents as appendices. So we'll go through the list. Hazmat storage inventory needs to be attached to Appendix A. Yes, we're going to do that. Monthly waste removal log. Yes, we're going to attach that. Hazardous waste storage inventory. Yes, that will be attached. Noise monitoring records we will also attach. Dewatering monitoring log will be attached also. Resource consumption log, yes, we're going to include that. A map of the monitoring locations, yep, we're going to add that. And then any other documents, yes, there are other documents that we want to attach, and they include the environmental training register, the environmental incident log, and any other miscellaneous documents that we can think of. So we'll tick that box also to indicate that these are the reports that we're going to, or the documents that we're going to include as attachments. So that's that section complete. I will show you now in a moment how to attach these various documents as appendices as a PDF file. So what you end up is with one single PDF file, which is a combination of report and tabs from the environmental data log. Okay, so the first thing we need to do now is save this file. And I've created a folder on my desktop which is called Monthly Environmental Report September 2015. Okay. Now the next thing I need to do is go to my environmental data log. And what I want to do is to create a PDF of this completed log. You can see here that all the tabs have been completed. So I click on Acrobat and then select Create PDF. And it will come up with this little window which gives me a number of options. I can choose to print the cover page and the instructions, which I'm actually not that interested in, so I'm going to remove that. The ones I am interested in are tab number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, where all the data is contained. So I'm going to click the Add button to add them to this little window pane, and these are the sheets or pages within the workbook that are going to be PDF'd. And then I just hit this button, convert to PDF, and click yes to it. And I need to save this somewhere, so I'll go back to my desktop. Monthly environmental report for September. I'm going to call this Environmental Data Log, September 2015. Okay, so the PDF appears, it's just been created, and we have our hazmat storage inventory, we have our waste management log, we have our hazardous waste storage inventory, resource consumption log, noise monitoring log, and the dewatering monitoring log. So we have everything we need right there. Okay, so I'll minimize that and I'll go back to my monthly environmental report. Now, what you need to do is, over here there's a little tab which allows you to look at some thumbnails. So I'm going to click on that, and here you can see that there's different appendices, as I mentioned before, at the end of this report. What we want to do is to go to the very end of the report, and this is the final page, Appendix H, miscellaneous attachments. What I'm going to do now is to click on this button, which is Insert Pages from Another File. I'm going to click on that, and that brings me to the folder that I created on my desktop. I'm going to choose Environmental Data Log, and then open that. And here it just asks, yes, are you sure you want to put it after page number 19? And yes, I do. And now the pages from the data log have been incorporated into the monthly report. What I want to do now is to put these pages in the right position, in the right order, to match up the appendices. So you click on this little button here, and what it will do, it will give you this different view of all of the different pages. On this side it allows you to magnify the pages, so I'm going to magnify, scroll down. Okay, so using this function I can now, with my mouse, pick up hazmat storage inventory and move it to the place where it's supposed to go. Hazmat storage inventory needs to be located after Appendix A, and we've just done that. Next is Appendix B, the monthly waste removal log. Here it is. So I'm going to drag it and drop it to where it needs to go. Just scroll out a little bit, and you can see that the monthly waste removal log appears after Appendix B. Similarly, we'll do the same with the hazardous waste storage inventory and with the noise monitoring data, the dewatering monitoring data, and the resource consumption. And just continue that. You can also attach the map of the noise monitoring, or the monitoring locations, and the miscellaneous attachments. So what we have here now is our report fully completed. All the data we need has been entered. All the attachments we need are attached in the right order. So we're in really good shape. Let's go back to the very top, and we can save this, save as, okay. So the report is now complete. All of the data has been entered, all of the appendices have been attached, and the report is now ready for submission. Thank you everybody for sticking with me during this rather long screencast. We do hope that the information provided is going to be useful to you in helping you prepare your monthly environmental reports a little bit more easily. Please let us know if you need any assistance. As always, myself and the environmental team, we're here to help you guys if you need any advice. And please let us know also what you think about this screencast. We will be interested to hear whether you guys think it's beneficial, and if so, perhaps we can do some more. Okay, thank you very much. Bye.